How does it work? Magnetic media. Discuss.
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
No.
No. So are you aware that tapes that we use on our computers are magnetic?
Yes.
Yeah? But you've never considered what that means?
No.
No. Okay. So tapes and discs, they are magnetic media, and when we record onto them, we subtly change the magnetization of the metal oxides which are on that tape. Okay? And then when they get played back, that subtle magnetic change can be picked up by what's called the head that reads the tape. Okay? And you know how a sound wave, which is like compressed air pushing itself backwards and forwards across the air as it comes towards your ears, can be represented by that sound wave that we see. We see it on our software actually when we do our editing. Yeah. Well, that wave that's represented there can actually be interpreted by a computer if it has an analog to digital converter. So it can actually study the wave and turn it into numerical values, so that if it then plays back those numerical values, it could, in theory, turn it back into an analog system and back into a sound. Okay, so that's the principle of how magnetic media works, but you do need that converter in the computer to turn it into binary digital data. Okay, so we know that we can save our programs onto tape, and we can retrieve them from tape, and we can also use discs as well, can't we? So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. The tapes, they were cheap to produce, but what was the big problem with the tapes? What have you encountered?
I've encountered that they're hard to get back to a certain point.
If you don't have a counter? Yeah, okay.
And also they wear away, don't they? At the point.
Yeah, and what's the other big problem when you want to play a game and you want to get on with it?
It takes a long time to load.
They're slow, aren't they? Yeah. And that's because a tape will only load onto something like the Commodore 64 at 300 bits per second. It's maybe 38 bytes per second, which is really slow. So if you have a game that's, say, 20 kilobytes on your tape, that's going to take about 9 minutes to load up. Yeah, but they were quite cheap, and that's why, especially in the UK, lots of people were saving and loading through tapes. What's the alternative? What was the other option?
Disc, like floppy disks.
Good, yeah, and you've seen them, haven't you? We don't actually have any here yet. Maybe later on in our life cycle of our channel we may well have them, but we don't have any discs at the moment. But I know you've seen them, and we'll put some pictures up on the screen. Now, if you take those cardboard discs apart, they were 5¼ inch discs back then, on most systems. You could actually take out what looked like a little vinyl record, but it was very thin and flimsy and made of plastic.
Yeah.
And it was also magnetic media. But the discs, they could rotate at 300 revolutions per minute, and they could transfer over 10 times as much data. So they were 10 times faster at loading. Yeah, so your 9-minute program would take under a minute to load. Back in the 1980s, why don't you think many children had disk drives and disks on their microcomputers?
Because they were too big to keep around, maybe?
Not really, no. They were a similar size, but the issue is they were 10 times faster, but they were also 10 times as expensive to buy, the disk drive. In fact, the disk drives cost nearly as much as the actual computers did in the first place. And that was a hard sell to parents back then who just bought you a computer if you then said, oh, can I have a disk drive as well? And that's going to cost you the same amount again. Remember, these computers were costing like £1,000 in today's money. So you'd be asking for a disk drive for, I don't know, £700 or £800 equivalent, something like that. Okay. But what was the alternative? So if you didn't have a tape or a disk drive, what did some other computers have? Do you know?
Did they have CDs?
No. CDs were knocking about, I think, in the 80s. Could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now I'm saying that, I'm thinking, is it like 1990? I'm sure they would have been invented though by then.
I'm not sure then.
No, cartridges.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So cartridges are a special case because they don't have magnetic media.
I thought cartridges and tapes were like the same thing.
No, not at all.
Oh, now I know what you mean by a cartridge, like the things that you put in Nintendo.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, so in the
Oh.
Commodore you could stick a cartridge in the back of it, and other systems had cartridges. Atari used cartridges a lot, but they weren't magnetic media. Inside the cartridge was actually memory banks of ROM. Do you remember what ROM stands for? Think back. Or can you tell me what it is?
ROM is the... Oh, I can't remember. Isn't it the short-term memory of the
No,
computer?
it's long term.
Oh.
If you'd thought it through, you would have thought, why would you want short-term memory on a cartridge? Because you might bring it home and then erase it. Yeah. So it's actually non-deletable or read-only memory, which is what ROM stands for. Yeah. So they actually almost were like an extension of RAM, because you had it on there, and when you plugged it in, the CPU could just use that straight away and not have to load the data from a tape. So you could have cartridges instead, working on a form of ROM. Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. There we go. It's time to play your last game of the series, and I've got a great one for you.